Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day to everyone around the world, no matter what time it is for you. My name is Josh Epstein. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Aris, and it's my pleasure to be moderating these panel discussions and being here with you today. So this discussion is part of a series that we call Pulling the Digital Thread, where we explore different topics and technologies that are shaping engineering, manufacturing, product lifecycle management, and the broader digital enterprise, all from the perspective of this connected data and information that makes up the notion of a digital thread. So our goal is to bring together different independent thinkers from around the world to exchange ideas and opinions and have some fun. Today we are streaming on a delay just to make sure we get a good high quality audio. So we won't be answering questions live. But we do encourage folks to participate by posting questions on LinkedIn. So please use the hashtag pulling the digital thread in your posts. Feel free to comment, share your own ideas, ask questions of the panelists, and we'll be tracking those, certainly as we air live as well as ongoing, and try to keep the conversation alive on LinkedIn. So this discussion will be recorded and available on demand after the event. So with that, let's dig in. So we'll do kind of more extensive introductions in a moment, but just to start out, so PLM and digital thread are very familiar concepts in discrete manufacturing, and it's a little more nascent in the continuous process manufacturing industries, whether we're talking food and beverage or chemical processing, materials, pharma, and so on. So since that's such a massive part of the modern world that we live in and the products that we work with, we wanted to explore that. So we wanted to explore the concept of how digital threads and PLM are really impacting process manufacturing in the same ways they do discrete. So enhancing connectivity, helping to accelerate innovation, and really driving efficiency across the life cycle. So today we're joined by three great thinkers. We've got Jim Brown from TechClarity, Leo Grillo from X Lifecycle, and Patrick Williamson from Aris. Welcome, team. So to start, I'd ask maybe you should just provide a short introduction, more than I did, of yourself, your background, and your experience with the topic at hand. So, Leo, let's start with you.
Yes, thanks very much. Thanks, Josh. Thanks everyone for joining. So I'm Leo. I've been in PLM space most of my career, whatever it means. So it's always interesting to see whatever PLM means for different organizations, different industries as well. So I worked a lot in discrete manufacturing and a little bit in process manufacturing as well. So I'll be able to share some of my experience today in different industries, from automotive to aerospace, with some as well exposure to food and beverage and energy sector and fashion retail. So different type of products, different type of industries. So yeah, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining us. Jim, please introduce yourself.
Great, thank you, Josh, and thanks for including me. I actually started as a mechanical engineer and somehow ended up in the process industry supporting enterprise solutions. I ended up going into actually first ERP and supply chain when I was with Accenture or Anderson Consulting at the time, and got the experience of the difference between bills of material and recipes with variable products and natural products that you had to worry about milk fats and things like that, percent milk fat in and that kind of thing, and sort of got a real education on it. And for over the last 20 years, I've been an analyst. What we say we do is make the business value of technology clear. And I've been focused primarily in the PLM space across different industries, but process always has my heart.
Great. And Patrick, my colleague Patrick from Aris.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, so I started out as a chemical engineer and then ended up in the PLM space. And I have the pleasure to have joined Aris in 2011, so almost 14 years now with Aris from the very early start with a very small group of people in Europe, now building the whole company together with all the people to what it is now. And my role is within pre-sales. So I do a lot of demonstrations, a lot of proof of concepts with potential customers, and especially also in the chemical industry and food and beverage. So I'm basically going back to my roots.
Excellent. Well, let's dig in. I can. This is a broad topic, right? And so I think we'll probably wander around the entire life cycle. But I'd really just sort of throw this out there before we dig in. I'd like to try to touch as we go through on really the full life cycle, starting from that sort of ideation and product planning into recipe and formulation management, supply chain collaboration. I think process management is obviously a big piece of the puzzle here. And then obviously compliance, traceability, digital twins, plant level asset lifecycle management subjects. So just with that as a very rough outline of the topics to hit, let's sort of maybe Jim, let's start with you. You actually wrote a great piece with Aris recently that's available on aris.com that looked at PLM and digital thread for process industries. Can you just really discuss, I guess, at a high level, the driving forces of digital transformation and how they're impacting process industries and digital thread thinking in process industries in particular?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think digital transformation is something that companies are facing across all industries. I mean, the competition is global. People are competing, in a stage where you have to continue to do better, both in terms of your products, but also in terms of your efficiencies to drive down cost. And we've actually done some research that shows that the product digital thread is not only important to R&D or not only important to manufacturing, but it actually is important to critical or important to driving long-term business success and profitability. It really is becoming a go-to, a must-have in the across all the manufacturing industries. But one of the things I think that's really interesting about it and why it's so attractive for digital thread and PLM, if you look at a lot of applications, they may help with improving the top line, maybe driving higher revenue, or they may be efficiency tools that help improve efficiency in a process to help save some cost. The digital thread, PLM, the digital transformation that's available there does both, right? I mean, you can help get products to market that are more innovative, more compliant, and get them faster so you capture more market share and gain more revenue. But at the same time, it gives you that back end efficiency, so that R&D and quality and packaging, everybody's working better together. So you get those cost savings as well. So I think that's why it's really so compelling.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think we'll probably it's a good kind of high level discussion of kind of the why. I think it'd be interesting to kind of delve into kind of really what the state of the state is, right? So maybe delving into that. So Leo, you've written about. I mean, Leo is a writer on engineering.com, one of my favorite writers in the space. I've seen you have written about PLM for process manufacturing in the past and the potential of modernizing how we think about formulation and recipe management. Can you talk about the role of process management? Let's sort of hit that one, because it's clearly not just we're not just talking about a bill of material for what goes into the product. It's really how it's made, how it's put together. That can be the secret sauce, so to speak, of a lot of process-driven products. But can you talk about that, the role of process?
Yeah, sure, Josh. Yeah. So to me, the importance is to look at what are the innovation cycles that whatever industry is looking to implement or optimize. And to me, PLM and digital thread is really about the return on innovation. So how do you, as Jim mentioned, how do you make sure that it's the top line is so delivering the turnover that is expected, especially in process manufacturing or in make to stock, I should say. Is really important because the variability is quite high. There's lots of competition. It's all about volumes. So you need to be really continuously looking at ways to optimize. Again, bottom line is important as well. But then it's about how do you bring product to markets and how do you make sure you maintain them in the market, and as well how you delist them. So how do you remove them from the market so you can manage your portfolio end to end. You understand the interdependencies, the successors, predecessor, the carryover. So the concepts are very similar to discrete manufacturing, but obviously the way that recipes and bill of materials are managed is very different. So the compliance the requirements are very important. They're changing all the time. Depending on the industry, they may be very stringent and very difficult to understand. I was about to say, or at least to comprehend. Sometimes they're not even well defined, so they are, or they're defined in a way that is stopping or reducing or injuring, I should say, commercialization. So it's a matter of understanding all those parameters, and then looking at how do we manage the ingredients, the chemicals, when you make process manufacturing, you can't put the product, once you mix the formula, and you can't put the product back into his box, if I may say, right? So you have to decide whether you want to write off or you want to commercialize it. So there is consideration of write-off at different stages, during the development cycle, as well as once the product is in the market. Should I introduce the next one if I haven't finished selling the previous one, assuming there is a variation in the product itself, or it's a new legislation that is driving some change, or so you have to constantly looking at internal and external factors from consumers, from the legislator, as well as from supplier chains, as you mentioned. There could be a constraint on the availability of certain component, or you may have, depending on the market, again, redirect production through the different factories or different suppliers. So very different landscape from discrete, where everything is predefined. And obviously there are changes, but they don't happen at the same velocity, right? And to build on again from what Jim was saying, the industry is sometimes or often less mature in process manufacturing in terms of PLM, because the focus is really on putting the product out of the gate, out of the door into the market. Therefore, it's really focusing on supply chain networks, on the innovation that makes the product being deployed to the market quick and in the right quality, as well as the upstream innovation, which is obviously quite affected by consumer sentiment and feedback you get live from real time analytics come to picture in more, I think, to my experience, in process manufacturing sometimes than in discrete manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean, you hit like several really important differentiators there. So let me see if I can name them. One, recognizing that even in process manufacturing, there's this discrete element. In fact, it's really an extreme exercise of variant management when you have, thousands of SKUs make to stock, and you're kind of managing that is a discrete challenge. Exactly. You talked about the emphasis of speeding time to market and kind of really kind of focusing on, innovation cycles and moving things through the system. As well as the complexities in recipe and formulation management. I mean, Patrick, I know we've talked before, and you've been. Let's sort of focus there for a minute, recipe and formulation management, because you've I think helped me understand that. I mean, you can sort of use the words interchangeably, but a recipe is a lot more than just the raw materials that go into it. So maybe we want to talk about your perspective on process and again the specialty processing or managing process.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, from a digital thread perspective, you'd like to understand when you develop the formula, you like to understand the ingredients, the characteristics of the ingredients, the nutrition facts of the ingredients, all kinds of information around the ingredients. Then put this into the formulation. How much would you like to put into a product? The quantities. But then, like you said, it's more than just a formulation. Then the recipe, actually, how it's being produced, which process step needs to be taken, what's the temperature, do you need to cook it, do you need to do this or that? And that ties again into the equipment you're going to use, and also where this equipment might be located. You get information back of what the equipment can actually do or can do. So you can make decisions on, okay, this is the formulation, but maybe the recipe needs to be slightly different for the different locations. And handling all of these, let's say, interlinkages or linkages between the formulation, recipes, the location, that is actually what you need to do.
Yeah, one of the things that really surprised me is I was, sort of coming from the bill of material world and looking at, recipes versus bill of materials is things like fruit. I worked for a jam company, and fruit comes in, and different times of the year it has a different Brix factor. It has different percent sugar, and so you never go in, and you're never going to build an airplane with 3 wings instead of 2 wings, right? It's always going to be the same. But how much fruit you put in can depend on the acidity or how sugary it is or how much water content is in there, and you might have to adjust other ingredients at the formula level. But then, a good cook, you can give the same 6 basic ingredients and they can make 100 different foods from it, and that's the recipe. And that's where that comes in with what Patrick is saying is all the processing steps. So it really is a fundamentally different way of looking at making something versus producing something.
Yeah, let's maybe stick on that idea of the interrelationship between the process and the equipment. I mean, Patrick, you and I were at we spent time in Paris at Aviva World recently with
Right.
lots of process manufacturing instances there, and obviously you have like plant level design, and we've done great collaboration with Aviva on managing that kind of large infrastructure asset lifecycle management. Then you kind of get down into like, okay, specialty equipment or configuration of a product line, and the value of a digital twin of a piece of production process. Maybe sort of talk about that, because that again, it starts to become a discrete. If you're talking about the configuration of a particular piece of process equipment, now you're back to like classic discrete PLM, right? Maybe talk about your experience there and some examples or industry examples of where.
Yeah. So, I mean, so one example I can think of is you want in the process industry, you want to make as much out of your equipment as possible. So it needs to be online all the time. So scheduling service, for example, on a machine or on some equipment is very important. So getting information back from that equipment, from that asset into your, let's say, technical staff or development engineers to, let's say, to make it even better, better design, but also plan for when is a service needed, when do you take out times and things like that is tied to, let's say, first of all, the recipe, but also on what equipment you have in the field, right? So this is where the operation and I think engineering design comes together.
That's interesting. Yeah, Leo, I'm curious as a PLM practitioner, and I assume you spent some time on the factory floors and thinking about kind of how products are brought to market. Yeah, what's your perspective here? What's the role of in a process manufacturing company? What's the interplay between the equipment and the way that the products are built?
Well, so production lines on process and discrete. Also, if you compare what you see on the building a plane or a car versus a process manufacturing, I think is very different. It's often everything has been designed for cost, and it's really optimized for be able to look at volumes, right? So it's the performance of the machines is managed towards productivity. And again, many organizations are looking now at contract manufacturing. So this is a lot of outsourcing. So they depending on the product, obviously, and how they manage their intellectual property, they'll be looking at suppliers to run this for them. So I think we can see a lot of synergies between industry or trying to adopt standards like the APQP standards for automotive, into other industries. So to just understand how to supplier deliver, how to control quality, how to make sure they do the right data, safety data sheets. So all the different health warnings and so on and so forth. As part of the product is obviously the packaging is quite important in process manufacturing products. Sometimes the packaging and the artwork is more complex than the product. That's what I sometimes say as a joke, because of all the legislation and the compliance requirements, the legal requirements, the health warnings. Again, could be adult products that are very regulated, that need to be tracked. Yeah. So if you ingest something and you have to call a number because of a health problem, then how do you follow that? Right. So all the traceability, the digital product passport, and so on and so forth are coming into play a lot more, or will be as the legislation as well is maturing. And there are products as well in pharmaceutical or other industries where there is not just liquids. So, there are hardware, electrical, software, mechanical parts, let's say, that combine together. So how do you manage this? The velocity of change is different between software and hardware and obviously the consumable. So how does that link to shop floor and manufacturing process? And it has a lot of implications. As to how you put the product together, how you ship it, the logistics that come with it, and all the safety aspect and the traceability that are legal requirement, plus sustainability, if you have to report on that across the 3 different scopes. Yeah, that's something that manufacturers are looking into.
Let's maybe double click on that sort of value chain or maybe supply chain management for a minute. Because I'm also just thinking from the challenge of exchanging data, of managing a massive number of suppliers. Patrick, I know you've done work both on general supply chain management as well as the sort of sustainability and kind of reporting angle. Maybe start with you. What perspectives on how do you manage that data exchange, and but more importantly, what are people struggling with today that perhaps technology could be of assistance?
Yeah. So supply chain is obviously a very broad topic, right? From can manufacturers deliver the raw materials? Is there enough? Is the price okay? But where we focus, especially on within PLM, is more of the technical data. So what does it do? Can it do what we said it would want to do? The requirements, we look at that. We look at the physical behavior, maybe the chemical behavior. All that data needs to be collected and then decided. Okay, this is what we need. This is actually the supplier we want to choose. And then also in the hardware design, for example, if you design a pump or pipes or whatever, you need to communicate with your suppliers, or even in many cases, this now becomes more of a partnership that you really work together on the same design, on the same aspects, and exchange data in much more higher frequency than in former days. So it becomes extremely important to have a platform to actually exchange data, but also collaborate on the data, and also to design together on that data. That's what I think is, especially in the planning phase of this, of designing the product, so designing the formulation, designing the recipe, the equipment. That's what we really are looking at in PLM.
Yeah. Can I jump in? I wanted to say a little something too to extend what Patrick is saying about, sort of the R&D side, and again, I'll use an airplane versus maybe a chemical here. I mean, one of the things you can send out a spec for a fastener and determine, does that fastener meet the spec or not? When you're working on a food product or when you're working on a chemical product, there's a lot more back and forth with the supply chain in terms of sampling and trying things, trying a new flavor, right? Or trying a catalyst. And, you may try something in a specialty chemical product and it just doesn't do exactly what you expect it to do. And so there's that back and forth and gaining experience. And so you have to kind of tie in the lab as well with the supply chain in that back and forth during R&D. And that's something that I think is a little bit unique and, probably doesn't quite support the way a lot of PLM systems were built originally for their digital thread.
Yeah, maybe let's back up and talk about that process of ideation and innovation management. Leo, looking at food and beverage, looking at other process industries, nutraceuticals, cosmetics. I have to imagine that the potential, the number of ideas that are actually brought to market are just a fraction of those that are considered. So, how do best-in-class organizations sort of manage that process? Is it part of the PLM cycle, or is it a different class of technologies or softwares that are supporting that process? How have you seen this function?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if I've seen best in class in all these areas, but I will say that there's still a lot of manual work I think is being done, even in big organization in that space. So back to the point of maturity at the beginning of this discussion, right? So I think it's a matter of understanding how do we share information, as Patrick said, on how do we manage IP as well. So how do we manage the creative process, basically, right? So there are lots of examples I can think of where, for instance, a supplier is bringing some IP, is being combined with some other added value creative work from an R&D team, and then it's been pushed to another supplier for manufacturing, or it's been done in-house, or it's a combination of things depending on the product complexity. So there's a lot of secrecy, I think, in trying to control IP and be very, very strict as to what we share with others, and coding and encoding, so we can basically track throughout the life cycle of the product from concept to production. But actually we look at how we can protect the IP of the originator of the idea, and as well file the patent, that relate to it if there is something relevant to file here. So I think it's a matter of really be able to protect the market that we are aiming to commercialize the product into, as well as work with partners. And as you say, a lot of partners, a lot of suppliers, and even different OEMs are partnering together to share some of that IP and work together on getting the benefit from this.
I'm curious, in practice, is this is this a structured data exchange? I mean, I can envision, secure emails, secure file sharing portals, and then all the way to sort of structured data exchange. I'm curious, in practice, are people extending PLM instances out into the supply chain? Is this portals? Is what's the Patrick, I know you've done some work here. Jim, I'm curious what your experience is you've seen here, and I imagine it's a range of. I'm sure there's lots of email flying around still, but
still, yes, and Excel, obviously. So we'd like to get away from files. So files are very. I mean, you hide a lot of stuff in files, and it's not as data driven as we'd like it to be. So yes, you exchange through portals, and obviously a 3D model is something you put into a file. Although there are also some new things in the market there as well, but it's more the data that is going back and forth through, let's say, web services or portals, or let's say certain format exchange that allows you to pull the data back into your environment and vice versa. So less files, more data. That's what I think is a very important part of the exchange, basically.
I think it's interesting too. A lot of you mentioned the spreadsheets and spreadsheets and email at always the top technologies in anything we survey. Not necessarily the most effective, but the other thing that you see a lot is, say you're developing a new product, R&D is working on something with suppliers. A lot of that information doesn't even end up in a spreadsheet on a server somewhere, because flavorist formulators love to work on desktops, right? They love to have their own information. So a lot of the iterations, a lot of what goes into making and fine tuning a product and getting that recipe right doesn't end up on a system at all. And maybe you only end up sort of scorekeeping at the end to get that final recipe into the system. And I think that is another structured data problem, right? Is a lot of that data isn't even captured in a way that you can use it, and even in a place that you can use it. So we definitely do need to formalize that process more. And a lot of companies, not everybody. There's definitely some companies that made a lot of progress there.
It's a key challenge, I think you're right, because then you lose the knowledge, right? So you make decisions, you end up with confirming a design, you lock it, but then you have lost the ability to go back and say, okay, what have I been looking in the past? Why did I make those decisions? So the challenge, I think, is in many organizations, we didn't put AI engine to look at searching through this information wherever it is stored in SharePoint or and you lose the link to the true PLM structure, data structure, as I was referring to earlier. So it's there, you can find it, and maybe Gen AI can help to query it and retrieve something out of it, but it's not necessarily structured, or lots of duplication. Therefore, it's not optimized necessarily for the next innovation cycle, right? It's a true, I think, maturity gap that I've seen in many industries. And as you say, Jim, it's not everyone, but generally speaking, I think there's still a lot to do to get a stronger R&D connection to downstream operations, so that the data is just one natural flow with feedback loops and not just, product has been designed or engineered. Now let's go and manufacture it, however you can, of operation.
Yeah, Leo, I think that's indeed a very good point. It's let's say it's not only the data; it's also the decisions you make around the data. And that's where PLM wants to support that decision making, that process on how you get to this decision. Why did you do it? How did you do it? With whom? Who decided? Why did you decide it in the way you did? All those things are extremely important to trace back. If you have an issue, or if you have maybe a new idea that you can build on let's say, former information, right? That's important.
Let's Leo, you brought up the AI term. Let's talk about this. This wouldn't be, near the end of 2024 if we didn't talk about the impact of AI, and I would say broader data science, advanced analytics, on product design. So, Jim, maybe to start with you, how are you seeing, AI being integrated or thought about, maybe in general PLM, but then also as we turn, specifically towards process industries? How is Gen AI gonna, produce a tastier beverage for us?
Yeah, and I mean, we got halfway through this without AI being mentioned, so I think that may be a record right now. Yeah, no, and I do think it's important to look at analytics and AI together. We actually see that first and foremost, what we just talked about. Leo mentioned it, Patrick, you furthered it, is that it's the data source for AI, right? And that PLM in the digital thread is a tremendous source of information. So regardless of the AI technology that you choose, having PLM, having that information accessible and at least somewhat structured. It doesn't have to be fully structured for AI to be useful, but having that data source is helpful. And actually, we see that top performing companies are about twice as likely to be using analytics and AI within their PLM environment. So where can they apply that? You think about the tastier beverage, right? I mean, definitely there's value of using AI, as well as some like molecular simulation and some really advanced tools that are specialty tools in recipes and formulation. Some really cool stuff going on there. But I also wouldn't want to shortchange just some analytics that are like, how far along are we in developing something? Or by the way, Patrick, your point about going back and looking at decisions. There's a really famous story about a product that was terrible for its intended use, but ended up being a blockbuster for another use. And normally that would just be a recipe that never got shared and reused. But they actually had the specs, and they're like, oh, it was too shiny to be this. But for this product, for this cosmetic issue, it turned out to be perfect, right? And so just those kind of analytics and being able to drill down into data, even if you're not all the way to generative AI, just doing some basic analytics can provide tremendous value on top of PLM. So it may be the anti-AI bandwagon answer on that one, but and I'm not anti-AI. I think the Gen AI is fantastic, but I think you can overlook a lot of really basic things you can get value from in the very near term.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, from my perspective, I've seen, to your point, I mean, we could probably spend a few minutes talking about Gen AI and all the cool things that you potentially can do with it from a generative design standpoint. But just looking at the the power of modern data science platforms, right, and the ability to, whether it's augmenting your forecast with advanced time series analysis, or applying, I studied OR, and sort of recipe optimization was like the classic, use case for optimization, and the availability of powerful algorithms out there to apply. All this does require kind of a different approach to sort of managing data, right? Patrick, I'm curious, like from your perspective, like how do you think about, obviously you need to protect some of the core IP, but the ability to leverage external data tools, whether it be a Gen AI platform or a data science platform. How do we think about data exchange in this space?
And it's already what Leo also said a little bit on the IP, right? So who has permission to see what, or what can you share with such a Gen AI tool? What shouldn't you share with the public tool? What needs to be more in the, let's say, internal tool? I mean, those tools you can also use internally, right? So this perspective of what do you want to share where is extremely important, and I think that's where PLM can help, right? In filling those buckets of the different types of data that we have inside the PLM system. But it's very valuable to we did some tests with to predict what let's say it's a consumer good. It's not a food and beverage, but it's how a product, how much money you could ask for it if you choose a certain design with a certain materialization. That sort of things with the data that you have in PLM on the different, let's say, recipes or designs, and then exposing this to some outside trends, you get back information from it, and that's a very handy tool to help the designers to actually come to the right decision. So and you don't expose too much IP, but you need to be very careful on what you put in which bucket, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a tool to help like tweak a product, and you say, okay, what if I change this, what will be the implications? And I think, I mean, I've seen a lot of examples with where we use AI to help decision making process. So Gen AI can be used to search regulatory changes that human people don't have time to read, or it will take an army of people to read, or so you can really, as an aid, doesn't mean it's the work. I mean, it's not about replacing the work or the human in the loop, but it's more about helping with some sort of an assistant, scientific assistant, or to help find the information, understand where it comes from, looking at how it has evolved, if it has changed from previously, and then do the impact assessment. So you can test a change on the product and say, okay, am I still compliant, or am I becoming compliant, or am I potentially infringing a patent? I know I'm maybe stretching the boundary a bit here, but I can see a lot of applications of AI in the future where the data is more connected. And as you say, Patrick, taking the outside data, consumer feedback, information that you get potentially live from social media or whatever sources, combining it with your requirements, your product requirements, your next product requirements, or your next product variance requirements, understanding all the implications, quality, compliance, sustainability, and using the AI engine to help simulate that, and give us prompts as to where to go, where not to go, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Josh, if I can throw back to your OR comment too. I mean, if you think about all the data that's being collected, time series data that maybe is in like a plant historian right now, and you've got structured data maybe in a PLM system, you start thinking about what can you do to increase efficiency in the plant for, say a food product, can of beans or something like that. You take a quarter of a penny off of a can of beans, and that's a lot of money at the end of the year because of volume. And if you think about that time series data, what you need to be able to do is compare that to a structured set of information that understands the the ingredients, but also the process, the specs, and the equipment, right? So you need sort of that fully structured formulated recipe, like an S88 kind of a model, to then be able to apply and apply analytics to look and see, okay, what could I tweak on the front end to really kind of close that loop? And there's a tremendous, and actually there's been some pretty cool things done there. But it all comes back down to data.
Yeah, you got to have the data, and I think that's absolutely some of the power of AI that we're seeing, the ability to synthesize unstructured data into a more structured format that you can then rely, trust, audit, and build on. Even one of my favorite examples that people are, I think, just understanding is like just this conversation today. Like AI is going to be able to, ChatGPT will be able to summarize the transcript of this conversation and help someone understand what we talked about in a matter of a few minutes. So I hope everyone out there has sat through and listened, but I also appreciate those that perhaps have had ChatGPT crawl the transcript and summarize into just a few minutes. Listen, that's about our time. I want to wrap up. This was a lot of fun. I think let's keep the conversation going online. So use that hashtag, pulling the digital thread. But Leo, Patrick, Jim, I appreciate the time. This is an exciting space. I would love to have you back here in a few months or so to sort of stay abreast of what's happening in the industry. So thanks for your time.
Cheers.
Thanks for including me.
Cheers all.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.